afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Q&A session this afternoon. My name is Rebecca Hansen, and I'm a program specialist with NIFA and the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program. This is a Q&A session for you all. It's a follow-up to the formal BFRDP technical RFA webinar that took place on March 8th. And if you would like to watch that recording or view the slides from that presentation, we do have a link for that. So I'll post that here in the chat in just a second. For this Q&A session, we will not be giving any formal presentation. Rather, this is just a time to answer your questions. So we do ask that you please type those questions in the Q&A box that you can find at the bottom of your screen, and we will be answering those in order. So I would first like to open up with some introductions from our BFRDP team, the Farming Opportunities Training and Outreach team, and then also NIFA's Awards Management Division. So first of all, I would like to invite Dennis Ebedagi, the National Program Leader for BFRDP, to please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Becca. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. And please ask any questions you would like to have that would assist you in submitting an outstanding proposal in 2023. We do welcome any types of questions, and the final Q&A will be on April 11 at the same time, from 2 to 4 Eastern time. Back to you, Becca.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And we also have with us today John LaBounty from NIFA's Awards Management Division. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. John LaBounty. I'm with Senior Grants Management Specialist with the A&D Division. I'm in charge of the BFRD program from the awards management side this year, and be here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I'm looking for some other participants from NIFA, and I'm not seeing any. So if we have any other NIFA folks in that need to introduce themselves, could you please throw something in that Q&A and I can get your video up, or at least get your voice on so you can introduce yourself. And for everyone else, like I said earlier, please do put your questions in the chat. That's how we're going to be answering those today, just in the order that they appear. Okay. I don't see anyone else here for introduction, so we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, and we just have a couple questions in the chat this time, so we'll wait for more to come in, but we'll start with the first few. So the first one here is, who should letters of commitment be addressed to?
You can address that to whom it may concern, or to the panelist. It doesn't have to have a name on it. You can address it to me if you like. The most important item there is the content of what you are submitting.
Okay, great. And we have another question. I know this question has come up a few times about using funds from the BFRDP grant in support of training mentors, and asking about funds being used for training. We've had that a few times. Do you want to start with that, Dennis?
Yeah. John, do you want to take that, or you want me to?
I'll let you take that. I haven't quite run into that situation yet.
Okay. Now, in training mentors, they have to be working on some efforts that would be very productive to the project, and you don't go ahead and pay mentors just for showing up. And that is the key. And for the mentors, they are teachers. So you pay them to teach the mentees. And there's no hidden agenda there because they are working in your program. And I hope that clarifies that question.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we've had quite a bit of questions relating to that. So the next question here, there's a question about what type of information should be included in the letters of commitment. I will just say first, and then John or Dennis, feel free to jump in, but the commitment letters, there is some description of what needs to be included and the point of those in the application that starts on page 28 of the RFA. Yeah, do you want to give a little bit more details on that, Dennis?
Now, in a letter of commitment, you have to indicate the specific effort that individual is going to be applying or contributing to the project. To send a letter of commitment saying, I like this project, it's going to be great, that is not a letter of commitment. What is that individual going to bring to the benefit of that very project? That is what is important.
Alrighty, another question here. Can there be any request of funding for an advisory council of farmers and stakeholders that are no longer considered new and beginning farmers?
If you have advisory council, if they are working for you and working for the project, then they are not really out there as beginning farmers. They are your advisors. So if they come to meetings and spend their time to give you ideas and suggestions to improve your project, you should certainly pay them, for their work.
Okay, perfect. It looks like those are the questions that we have right now. So again, feel free to put any other questions in the Q&A. Something we tell all of our applicants a lot too is to make sure that you're reading the RFA, the request for applications, really thoroughly. We put a lot of work into putting together the RFA and providing as many details as we can. So a lot of those details are going to, and your questions should be answered with the RFA. Again, that's the point of this Q&A session, is to fill in those gaps, but read the RFA, that's going to help you a lot in developing your applications. Okay, it looks like we have another one here. They're asking about the amount of funding that should be or could be requested and applied to staff salaries.
I can
It
tell you.
depends on what. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can tell you when I'm looking at a proposal and processing it, I'm looking at two things. One, on the current and pending, the amount of involvement that you're going to have on your current and pending statement as a percentage of your time versus the amount of salary that you're going to be drawing from the federal funding. This salary must be equal to or less than your current and pending percentage of involvement. I haven't seen any real limit. I've worked grants where 100% goes to, like, say, a fellowship or something. But that really just depends on how you're structuring the project. and whether or not the person that you're talking about is going to be 100% involved with that or only partially involved. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Okay, a question about collaborating with University Extension and if that is allowable when applying for a simplified standard grant.
Anyone you want to collaborate with is adequate. There's no specific requirement in regards to who you should collaborate with.
Okay. We kind of have a follow-up question with mentors receiving training and them wanting to receive training how to be good mentors. I will say something that we have talked about in the past is you can definitely encourage, require your mentors to have training, but the funding for that training cannot come from a standard grant for BFRDP. The standard grant funding is directed at those new and beginning farmers and ranchers. There is kind of a separate part or a separate grant within BFRDP called the Educational Team Grant, and that is targeting the people who are training, basically the train the trainer type of program. So that is aimed more at teaching those farmers how to train other farmers. But if you are applying for a standard grant, the funding needs to go towards your target audience of new and beginning farmers. So again, you are definitely allowed to provide training to mentors, whoever you're recommending as mentors, but that funding can't come from the BFRDP grant, if that makes sense. Dennis, is that?
Yeah, thank you, Becca. Well said.
And then they had mentioned, can they use match funds? If they're not using federal funds to support the mentor training, can they use match funds for that mentor training?
They can, but the question there is, when you put it as an objective, that becomes a challenge because it's not a legislative priority. So when you place it that as an objective in your application, I don't know if that bodes very well for your application. Because you are supposed to, as a grantee, come with the right tools you need to train your farmers. So if you don't have the right tools, then you need to explore the possibility of getting those right tools and then come back and apply. I hope I'm making some sense in this explanation.
Okay, another question on applying when you're already in the middle of a previous funding cycle. So can I apply for new funding if I am still halfway through the previous funding cycle?
That's a very good question. Now, according to the eligibility, you should have completed your work or you are in your last year of project work. So if for some reason you got delayed and you don't have adequate outcomes to share in your application, it is best to wait until the following year. That is the advice anyone can give in regards to that, because if you're not on your way in completing a project, there's no need applying for a new one.
Okay, and then a question here about, can you explain the difference between a contractor and a sub-awardee?
John?
Yep. Okay. So a contractor is somebody that you're hiring to perform a specific function, like say provide database management or develop your database. The sub-awardee is somebody you're passing money to from us to perform basically the same to perform the project. Okay. You're kind of, it's not like you're hiring somebody to do it. You're just passing grant money on to them to do the project. And then you're doing your project and monitoring them. The contractor is like a one-off kind of operation. Kind of like hiring an accountant to handle your books for you. That could be a contractor. Does that work? I can go into other examples if you need any.
They did have kind of a follow-up with that of wondering in which situations do they need to include a subaward budget attachment and how to decide if someone should be considered a contractor awardee with that.
Well, like I was saying, as far as the monetary part goes, if your subawards come to more than 50% of the total federal funding that you've been awarded, we would have to do a more in-depth review of your subawardees. But it doesn't necessarily, unless it's in the RFA, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I don't believe there's a limit to how much you can pay your subawardees in the RFA. So if you're doing that, you may be looking at some other type of award, like a Center of Excellence, or, you know, where you pretty much are just monitoring subawardees to do stuff. But in this case, I'm not seeing a huge limit. Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong on the subawardees. All I do is extra diligence if they're over 50% of the total federal funds.
No, you are right, John. You are right, because with a sub-award, you are tied to the hip with the project director. With a contractor, you don't have to have that contractor to complete your project work. You can always change at any time.
Yeah, and for the other part of your question regarding consultants, there usually isn't a limit. Once again, just like with subawardees, there comes a point where if you're paying the consultant or contractor above a certain hourly wage, I believe it's $81 or $89 an hour. I could be wrong. I'd have to double check. But if you're over that, then you have to justify why it's over that limit. If it's way over that limit, in other words, somebody with, like you were saying in your question, exceptional expertise, then we would need like a CV and, you know, copies of the invoices, their normal charges for, you know, their services to confirm that that's a legitimate and acceptable fee that you'd be charging to the award.
Okay, and then a question here about, is there a range of how much we can pay consultants? I'm not sure if that means, it says folks with exceptional expertise. So I'm not sure if that is contractors or more like your mentors who are providing training.
Yeah, yeah, this is one that I was talking about. With a consultant, and I'll let Rebecca, with a consultant, it's the same thing as like a contractor. You're hiring either a person or a person's company to do work for you on a specific portion of your project. You can charge up to a certain dollar amount per hour, which most consultants do, you know. And if it goes over a certain dollar amount, then I would have to have extra information from them in order to process it.
Okay, and then can you use in-kind contributions from a marketing representative to market your project?
Can you use what?
They're asking about in-kind contributions from a marketing representative to market their project.
You mean match?
Wouldn't that come in as a program income, John?
In-kind contributions are a type of match, where people can contribute their time and expertise as match, and then you would assign a dollar value to that and have to be able to justify the dollar value. Is that what you're talking about when you're asking about in-kind there?
Yep, they said yes.
Cool.
Perfect.
So yeah, 2 CFR kind of covers in-kind match and different types of match that you can bring to an award. So is everybody familiar with 2 CFR 200? Now you are.
Okay, and it looks like we still have I don't know if it's a legacy hand from Joshua. I saw that he had answered one of your questions in the chat. So if you still have a question, feel free to type that again in the Q&A box.
Yeah, I believe Joshua can get off the mute to ask if he wants to.
Joshua, do you want to ask your question? Or if that, I'm not sure if that was a legacy hand, but. Looks like it might be a legacy hand. Okay, another question that's coming through here. Asking about if applicants should, or it's saying in the RFA that applicants should make use of existing curriculum, whether USDA funded or not, including entries in the BFRDP curriculum and training clearinghouse. They're asking just for a little bit more explanation on that description.
Yeah, any curriculum you are comfortable with, you can use it. It doesn't have to be USDA curriculum.
And Nikki, if you had kind of a more specific question for that, feel free to put that in the chat. Other questions from you all? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Dennis.
If you have any priorities that are not in the legislation, please share with us. Schedule a meeting with Crystal, Becca, and myself, and John also, to find out if what you are proposing is acceptable. I don't think it would be fair to you and your team to go ahead and work on a priority that may not be relevant to the benefit of beginning farmers and ranchers. So please ask if you are in doubt. Back to you, Becca.
Okay, another question about clarification on the threshold of contractor rates. This one's addressed for you, John. That they're trying to ensure that all contractors fall underneath that rate in order to minimize paperwork.
I'm typing in an answer now.
Okay, perfect. And question on funds for international travel and how that works with the BFRDP grant.
You have to have a very strong justification, because BFRDP is domestic, it's not international. So you have to give a justification as to why the benefit of going abroad is useful to your project, that you cannot get that very same type of knowledge within the country.
Alrighty, and then there's a question about conflict of interest and what is determined as conflict of interest. and what that form is for.
Okay. John, you want me to take that?
Please.
With the conflict of interest is to show the panelists who are reviewing the types of groups or individuals that you have conflict with, that you prefer they are not involved in your effort as far as seeing the success of your project. That is why you have that very form to complete in terms of conflict of interest.
Mhm.
It helps the panelists in the review process.
Okay, and then another question about, well, I guess not another. They're asking about, can we invite a international speaker to come and present?
Again, it goes back to that same question,
Mhm.
because in the request for application, it says this is for the US and its territories. So you have to strongly justify why there isn't anyone in the country with that qualification that you'll be inviting someone. If you're able to convince the reviewers, then, more power to you. But I'm not a reviewer. I don't know if I want to take that chance, to be honest with you. But if you feel strongly that there's no qualification in the country, and that is why you are bringing that person, there's no reason why you cannot invite that individual.
This one might be for you, John. Would consultants have to follow GSA rates?
Yes.
Short and simple.
Yep.
Okay, and then a attendee has a question about the priority that is talking about climate change and climate smart agriculture, food and forestry. So if that's a potential priority area, they're asking, should they discuss that with you, or is that part of the approved list? And I believe that is on page 15, or sorry, page 6 of the
Correct.
RFX.
That's the priority number 15.
Mhm.
It's in the priority list. It's one of those priorities that was approved in the by the Secretary of Agriculture.
Just waiting for some other questions to come in.
Yeah, while we are waiting for questions to come in, there was a question the other day on indirect cost. According to legislation, 10% indirect. And if you have a negotiated rate, John, do you want to expand on that, please?
Sure. The RFA for BFRD program lists 10% TFFA as the indirect cost rate that applies to the program. That's 10% of the overall federal award amount. Okay. So if you're even looking at, say, a NICRA that you have in place that allows, say, 30% on your modified total direct cost, it still can't be more than that 10% of the what the RFA is allowing.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Prior to 2018, it was 30%. After 2018 Farm Bill is 10%. So please take note of that. Please ask any questions. And we'll be happy to yield back the rest of the time to all attendees if there are no questions, but I know you have questions. We thank you for coming. If you have a lot of questions you would like to ask and you would like to set up an appointment, please send email to Rebecca and we can get on the Zoom and work with you. I mean, we cannot share with you what to put in your proposal, but we can respond to any questions you feel are doubtful or you are not sure of that need to go in there. We are here to assist you prepare strong proposals for submission. Right, John?
There must be someone on here who knows you, Dennis, because they're asking if you're planning to come and travel and see them, but they're an anonymous attendee, so I'm not sure who it is.
You know, since 2019, I mean, because of the pandemic, I really haven't been on much travel, but I'll be happy to start doing that this year and going forward. Yeah, we'll stay on for 5 more minutes. And if there are no questions, we'll yield the rest of the time to you.
And I did go ahead and put our email contacts into the chat, so you can find those there. I guess I left off John's, but that's also just first name dot last name at USDA.gov. They're all pretty standard.
Yeah, this is Dennis here. I would like to emphasize what Becca said earlier in terms of reading the request for applications. Please read it over and over and ensure that line by line, you are following what the RFA is asking you to do. That is very important. Because for all the review, I mean, the panelists, they go by what's in the RFA to review the proposals and score them accordingly. So please take note of that. So John, any final thoughts if there are no more questions? Becca?
No, I'm good to go. Like I said, if you guys have any questions on, policy and what goes into it, you can sure give us a call. I don't usually get involved into what, goes into your application packet. Once it comes to me, I do process it. And if me or my team have any issues while we're processing, we do reach out to you. So.
Yeah, Becca, back to you. Please, we appreciate all you're doing to prepare for your BFRDP applications to come in. Becca, back to you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for attending. Yes, the session is being recorded. It's found on this, it will be found on the same location where you registered for this event. And we do have one more Q&A session on April 11th from 1 to 3 p.m. Central Time, or we'll start at 1 p.m. and then go until the questions run out like we did for this one. You can register for that at the same link as you did for this one. I just put that in the chat as well. So if you have any questions, we'll be here to answer those. And besides that, that's all I have. So thank you for attending.
Thank you all.
All right.